Well, hey everyone, we are back again with our series where viewers ask me 3 questions, and I have a viewer from every state. So this week we're talking to Shelli from Wisconsin, and Shelli's a retired nurse, and I'm surprised by how many nurses I have had asking me questions and watch and everything. I think it's such an amazing crossover between the two businesses that I never would have foreseen. I think before doing this channel, how many nurses were interested in funeral business and funeral business people interested in nursing and everything. It's pretty amazing. What video got you to my channel?
I don't even know. I've probably been watching probably at least a year now, pretty much after I retired. I don't even know which one it was. I don't know.
I'm always interested what popped up and somebody clicked on and then they went down the rabbit hole of Kari the Mortician.
Yeah, I don't know, but I've been fascinated ever since.
Oh, so. Awesome. Thank you. Well, what's your first question for me today?
Death is kind of divided, as far as I can tell, into like 3 sections. There's before you die, during the death, and then the after part of it. And this part of it is kind of the after part. When you were going to school, what kind of preparation do you have for the after part of it? Are there classes or training on wills and insurance and advanced directives, that kind of a thing?
We go over a little bit, like more the pre-funding in terms of, oh, Green Bay Packers, there you go. We do more of the pre-funding and trusts and things. So if someone sells like insurance through funeral homes and that kind of stuff, you have to be licensed. I've never gotten licensed. I've never needed to. I've always just worked in trusts when I've done pre-funding and pre-arranging. So, we cover some of that, not a lot of it. A lot of that's more hands-on. Now, wills and everything, we don't really get into. We learn what the terms mean, but we don't really get into talking with families about them because it's a lot of legality, and we kind of avoid some of that, I think, unless we're really versed. I want to do videos on that coming up with a lawyer just because I think it's good information. And so I get more information about it, but it's also an area we learn as we encounter things that go wrong. Is how a lot of us learn a lot of different things in life. Like with wills, I think a lot of people believe that if they write something down and just put it in a drawer, like this is the will and testament of Kari Northey, and I put it in a drawer somewhere, that has no value, truly. Right. It's not a legal document. It needs to be filed with a court. It needs to go through an attorney. Like, it has all these steps that you really need to go through. I think movies do us such a disservice, like a lot of different things, but where people think, oh, we're going to read the will and testament of so-and-so, and it's going to just be, everything. But wills don't get read for weeks, sometimes after a death. And so if somebody puts in a will what they want for their funeral, it's not going to be found sometimes for a very long time, too far after. And so some of that is just very misconstrued information that's put out there, just like, I don't know, just like veterans get free funerals and, the state's going to give you a lot of money for your funeral and stuff. So we don't have a huge training in that, but we do learn along the way, at least how to direct people in the right way for probate. I'll print off a lot of times forms for people because that's all online. If they need to file for probate, I'll print off a form for them, or I'll give them what I can find, and then they got to figure out on their own, because a lot of that would mean I'm getting into a lot of their finances, and I don't need to do that. I don't need to know all of that. I don't need to know who's fighting with who and who wants who. Like, that's too much drama that doesn't need to be put on the funeral director. Some funeral directors thrive on it and they dive right into it, but I don't have time for that to get into that. So
do you have a lot of or any like psych training? I mean, I know that you have a psychology background too, but is that a part of the funeral teaching or training?
No, we do like a basic maybe psychology class or sociology or something like that. And a lot of mortuary science programs have that where we learn the basics of the stages of grief and what people may be going through. But none of it can prepare you for working with somebody when they're in that raw, fresh state. A lot of studies have found grief doesn't start until long after they're with us at the funeral home, like a week or two after the funeral. And so, people say, oh, I'm going through my stages of grief. And it's like, they just died 24 hours ago. Like, you are not starting anything yet. So being able to at least prepare people for what they're going to encounter coming up in the weeks ahead and what might be natural. And those things are good. A lot of that goes into the aftercare position of somebody at the funeral home. They're the ones who are going to, if the funeral home has an aftercare program, they're going to be contacting the family afterwards. They're going to be answering a lot of those questions and helping them find maybe a support group or, connecting with them on anniversaries and the 1-year mark and checking in on them and doing those things. And so they're going to do a lot more of that. I do have my bachelor's in psychology, and so psychology fascinates me. So I really do love that part of the business and that part of working with people. I like when I'm sitting working with a family and I can say, what do you think of this poem? And it's like perfect. Or, being able to get a vibe with people and maybe point them towards things that might be the right match for them. And they can tell but it might just click. And so some of that, I love helping them navigate some of those, rather than here's 100 poems to read.
Sure.
Saying, this one or this one might be really good. What do you think? Or, hey, you've been talking about how much your dad liked working with maple and how your kitchen was all maple. These are maple caskets and all different price ranges, but if you don't like it, let me know. We can look at, or here's a maple laminate option that's less expensive if you want a maple look, or just pointing people towards things that maybe might resonate with them, I think, in the moment, and make it a little more, I don't know if special is the right word, but more personalized for what they're doing, because so many people just are really lost and they're raw and they just need somebody and that's where people can get into trouble as well if they get with the wrong person, because they trust and they think they're being guided in the right direction and they're guided towards an insane amount of money type funeral. So I know why funeral directors get a bad rap, because there are some bad people. And it's because people are so raw and vulnerable, and, so the rest of us take the brunt of what some of the few bad people do. So, but there is some training, just not a ton.
Okay. I know that we talked about, or you talked about in the past about how when your niece died and you were the caregiver, you kind of went into that funeral director mode part of the way. Do you think that you grieve different if you are a caregiver as opposed to if you're not? I feel like
for sure.
I feel like I did with my mom, and when she died, and with my husband when he died. So I just wondered if you felt the same thing.
Did you take care of them at home, like a hospice situation, or like what did you?
My mom, I did. My husband was in the hospital when he died, was in him for 9 weeks before he died. And so, and I was there with him the whole time, and watched, what the nurses do and the kind of job that I did. So it was part of me was the nurse when I was there, and part of me was the wife. And I just, it was surreal to me afterwards. And I wondered afterwards, what if I was just the wife and not the nurse, if I would have grieved differently.
Well, and I think you're never fully in the moment of the loss, because you're always trying to care for somebody. It's whether you're taking care of the rest of your family, it's like you guard yourself by doing these caregiver actions. but that's what we've trained our bodies and our minds to do for however many years. Every time there's a loss, every time there's a moment of emotion, every time there's something that we need to jump into action to do. And to turn that off, I feel like is impossible in its entirety. Even if it's somebody I know just a little bit, like my husband's always like, don't touch them, don't straighten their shirt, don't do this. You know, like we go to a visitation and I'm just like, I have to. Like there's a piece of lint, I can't leave that piece of lint on their jacket, you know, just even to that minute level. I'm so just fastidious about all those little things. And I think with my niece, I truly remember it like that. My mom said, she's died. Your sister wants you to care for her. So there was never a moment where I could just take a breath. As an aunt, I immediately went into action. But I had run that scenario a lot of times leading up to that, because not that specific, but I always thought, what if he did something to her? And what would I do? And I had run some of those scenarios. I'm a scenario runner. I run them still to this day. Like if there's a fire, how am I getting my family out? If there's like, I'm just that, maybe it's anxiety. I don't know. I don't know. But it's just part of who I am. And so I think because I had run those scenarios and had thought the worst case scenario, I was able to go into autopilot a little bit quicker and a little bit easier. I took all of what might have been pain or shock. I think I was just in shock in general. I don't think that changed, but I think I took all of that other and focused it. But when everything was said and done, it was all still there. It was just, when is it going to come together? So I feel like even 3 years after, I was still having really hard moments once in a while, and things that, would I be having these? You know, I always thought, would I have this moment if I had just been her aunt? I had no knowledge of funeral business and I had nothing. Would I have had this moment? But then I also think, what would that funeral have looked like if I didn't know what I know?
Yeah.
Would we have thought to take her to our home and drove her back to Michigan from Ohio ourselves? Would we have had all that additional time with her? Would we have been as hands-on with her? Would we have had those moments as a family, things that helped us get to a healthier next phase if I hadn't have been the funeral director? And so I think there's pros and cons, you know. You knew as a nurse if the care was good or not. You knew if they were doing what they needed to do. And so you never have to second guess that part of like those 9 weeks with your husband. And so that was a blessing of the moment, even though it meant that later there was a little bit more rocky moments, I would guess. So I think that for sure we grieve differently. I always call it being on the other side of the table. I don't know if I can ever fully just be on that other side of the arranger table and just let somebody take care of me fully, because I don't do that in any area of my life. You know, like if I go get a massage, I don't lay there quiet for 60 minutes. I like lady, and I don't know. It's hard for me to just succumb and be taken care of. And it's just not part of who I am. But then I'm always mad that that's never done. So, you know, it's darned if I do, darned if I don't, I guess. So who knows? Yeah.
Do you think that people who survive a sudden unexpected death grieve differently or harder than people who have like anticipatory grief? Do you find that different when you're making arrangements or anything like that? Or doesn't that make any difference?
You know, the arrangements definitely are. You are working with someone in a moment of shock that can barely tell you what their name is, let alone make a decision on all the 400 things I feel like we ask somebody to make a decision on. They burn out much quicker when you're making arrangements. You can just see them shut completely down. And it doesn't take long in those situations. One of the worst things is that a lot of times when there's a tragic, a accident, murder, thing like that, you have then the grief therapists who come in, or the people right on scene, and they may get, some of them push prescriptions. So they'll say, let's call your doctor. Let's get you something to help you sleep and to help you through. I've had mothers sleep through their children's funerals. I've had wives who didn't even know where they were because they were so medicated and their friends are just popping the pills. And to me, it's the absolute worst thing. Nothing is going to make those moments better for people.
Right.
And you have the helpers who think, oh, it's too hard for them. But what's going to be worse is them a month from now, off medication, trying to remember these last moments seeing their loved one, and they can't because they were so medicated and they missed it all.
Yeah.
Because they were medicated. And that to me is the worst thing, but I see that a lot. And that doesn't happen in anticipatory grief, like a hospice or a long-term cancer type thing. You may have somebody who's maybe on like an antidepressant or something, but that they've been on for a while, but you're not going to have somebody who's in quite as much shock, quite as much zombie mode. I guess it's probably the best way, medicated or not, that they're just completely numb to everything going on. And they've got to have somebody guiding them a lot, and they have to have somebody help them make every decision, and they just don't know which ends up. And, and sometimes it's not just dealing with the loss, it's sometimes dealing with shocking information. Maybe a man died when he was in bed with another woman.
Sure.
And trying to process, my husband was having an affair and he's dead. So do I hate him? Do I love him? Am I sad? Like, it's even more so. And that happens, not just that scenario, but there's a lot of scenarios where you find out a lot more information than maybe just the death. Autoerotic asphyxiation.
Yeah.
Maybe some, these shocking moments, or suicide is a lot of, is this my fault? Is this, it's not just, car accident is one thing, but some of it is amplified.
Sure.
Because of the type of death, for sure. But, anticipatory grief is like all that pain drawn out.
Mm-hmm.
Horribly long period of time. I don't know which is better. I think about my niece and I think, what if she had cancer? And what if we had, months to say goodbye and months to process this and months to do this? What would that look like? What would we have done differently? What would we have, what would have changed? Would our feelings, where would they have been? And I think there's so much, and I think of that sometimes. Mm-hmm. Would it have been easier? Would it have been worse? It's all the what ifs that everybody plays. The grass always seems greener.
Yeah.
I would have been able to say goodbye. I wish I would have had more time.
Mm-hmm.
But would it be easier to just rip the Band-Aid and it be over quicker?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Ask a family who's had to make the decision to pull life support and sign a paper saying, kill my love. Not saying kill your loved one, but I've had people tell me that's what it feels like you're doing, is saying, yes, go ahead and kill my loved one.
Yeah.
Take away what's keeping them alive. And if you had to ask them, I'm sure they would have rather somebody just died and them not have to make those decisions. So I think the grass is always going to be a little greener, maybe in a lot of ways, but I think it's a hard road. We're not meant to understand death. We're not meant to take on that pain and that burden. And we never can get ready for that day without somebody around, completely around. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no calling, there's no, I'll talk to them later. It's just this a void and we can't fill it. We can't replace it. So Yeah, it's always going to be there. It's always going to hurt. There's no good new day. There's no back to normal. It's just always this loss.
Yep, I know.
Yes, I'm sure you do, dear. I'm sure you
Yeah.
do.
I think it would be really nice, you know, they in hospitals, they send, well, in hospitals, when a baby dies, they send a little basket of stuff home, or a little box of stuff home,
Yeah.
keepsake stuff for the footprints and the handprints and stuff like that. And, you know, not that I want anybody's footprints or handprints when they're dead and they're old, but I think that I wonder if in the hospitals or the nursing homes, when they were going to when they anticipated death, especially, you know, people don't know about that. I can take my husband home. I can participate in a bath. They don't know all that stuff. I think it would be a nice thing. I don't know how you would do it, but it would be a nice thing
Yeah.
to make people aware of those kinds of things that they could participate in. I don't know how you would set something up like that, but I think that would be a nice thing.
Well, and I think that's one of the biggest things with my videos, even if it's 10 people watch a video and understand something they didn't know about what they can do.
Mm-hmm.
And I can close the casket and help tuck my mom in.
Yeah.
Directors who don't want to do that with a family presence still, and letting them know that. And you can be there and help place your mom on the cot and help walk her out to the vehicle. And you can come in and do her hair or nails yourself. And you can be part of all those things. It's important to be, part of all those things. I always say that, especially families I know and I've worked with that had hospice at home. And I always say, like, for closing the casket, I'll say, you took care of your mom up to this point. Would you like to help me tuck her in this one last time?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, yeah. A lot of them are like, well, heck, yeah. Because especially in that hospice where you have been there doing all of that caretaking for so long, it's really important and is good. So I think it is. And you're right. Like, how do you get that out there informational wise? It's really about staff embracing some of those moments. And so you may get one or two nurses or one or two aides or, at random places that offer it to families and tell people, but that's what it takes. Cause I think a worldwide initiative or, something bigger, it's probably not going to happen because it's not comfortable for everybody that's doing those jobs. So it takes the people that have the comfort level to offer it for it to be there. Because just like bringing your kids to a funeral, it's not comfortable for the adult. A lot of times it has nothing to do with the kid, but it's uncomfortable for the adult to go. So they don't want to offer even to somebody else to be part of that moment. So to me, it's kind of like that same thing. There's caregivers, like, it's hard for them to be there with that deceased and to be part of that because, they may be attached to the person or they may just be uncomfortable doing it with a family. And so they're not going to offer it, but there's others that see the beauty and understand it and will do it all the time. So, just like everything, good and bad, and, good situations, bad situations, but yeah.
Well, I've got more questions, but you've got to go. So.
Oh dear. Yeah. We may do a part 2 with Shelli in Wisconsin.
Yeah. Some other time, maybe.
These are good. You're getting me emotional though, man. You're like going for the heart with them. It's so good. Oh, well, thank you so much. These were really good questions. And I'm sure a lot of people have some of these same questions of, and have gone through the motions and wonder what if, and I think talking through some of that is really good. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, everyone. And make sure to subscribe so you can check out the next viewer question and answer session that we do next Sunday. Bye.